They told you sex was dirty. They told you desire was dangerous. They told you purity was your worth until marriage. But what happens when the cage breaks? When faith collapses and you find yourself standing naked, not just physically, but spiritually, in a world where pleasure is no longer forbidden, but terrifyingly free. This is the story of purity culture, and how breaking it doesn't just change your faith. It changes your body, your mind, your relationships, and your sexuality forever. For decades, evangelical purity culture shaped millions of lives in America. Rings that promised virginity until marriage. Youth sermons warning girls their worth was like chewed up gum. Boys taught to fear lust more than death. Girls taught that their bodies were stumbling blocks, traps, sins in human form. Purity culture was never just about faith. It was about control. It was about defining who gets to touch desire and who must bury it. And so, an entire generation grew up learning to hate the very thing that makes us human, our sexuality. But faith has cracks, and purity culture carries its own rot inside. Because here's the dark truth: repression does not kill desire. It intensifies it, it distorts it, it twists it into something secret, shameful, sometimes violent. The scandals proved it. Pastors caught in affairs, youth leaders abusing children. Josh Duggar, the shining star of Christian purity, arrested for child pornography and rape. Purity culture was supposed to protect, but instead, it bred dysfunction, fear, abuse, shame so deep, some people couldn't even kiss their partner without panic attacks. And when the walls finally broke, when believers left the church, they weren't just leaving religion. They were stepping into a sexual wilderness. What happens when you leave purity culture behind? Some describe it like learning how to breathe again. Others, like learning how to touch themselves for the first time without crying. Reclaiming masturbation is often the first rebellion. Think about it. For years, even touching your own body was branded as sin. To undo that conditioning, to let your hand move without guilt, to let pleasure rise without shame, it's not just sexual, it's spiritual. For many, that single act is the moment purity culture finally dies inside them. Purity culture demanded rigid boxes, masculine men, submissive women, anything else, a sign, a rebellion, a rejection of God. But when those boxes shatter, something beautiful happens: expansion. Former believers cut their hair, grow their hair, pierce their bodies, change their clothes, small rebellions that whisper, "I am mine now." Some come out as queer, bisexual, pansexual. Others transition, finally aligning their gender with their soul. And with every choice, guilt fades. The heavy chains of heteronormativity loosen. And for the first time, sexuality feels like freedom. Purity culture taught one path: heterosexual monogamous marriage. But once you leave, you realize there are infinite paths. Some ex-believers date for the first time in their lives, not because their pastor approved it, but because they chose it. Others experiment with polyamory, open relationships, or casual sex, not out of rebellion, but curiosity. And many, they finally give themselves permission to love across genders, to say yes to the desire they always carried but always repressed. For the first time, relationships are not cages, they are experiments, and each one brings a new piece of freedom. But make no mistake, leaving purity culture is not just liberation. It comes with pain. Families cut ties, churches brand you a heretic, spouses leave when they realize your newfound freedom terrifies them. The world you once belonged to turns its back, and sometimes you have to burn your whole past just to survive. But the fire of loss clears space for something else: self-acceptance, a sexuality that is not about rules, but about truth. The most radical thing ex-purity culture survivors do is also the simplest. They enjoy their bodies. They touch without guilt. They moan without fear. They kiss without hearing God's anger in their head. Masturbation, once sinful, becomes healing. Sex, once duty, becomes discovery. Pleasure, once forbidden, becomes power. This isn't just about orgasm. It's about agency. It's about saying, "My body is mine. My desire is mine. My soul and my sexuality are not enemies. They are the same voice." So, if you grew up with purity rings, with shameful sermons, with the endless fear that sex would destroy you, hear this: sex will not destroy you. Shame will. And when you take that shame off your skin, when you finally undress it, you don't just discover pleasure, you discover yourself. Because purity was never the goal, wholeness was. And wholeness begins when you stop apologizing for your body and start listening to it. Slow fade. Voice drops into a whisper, intimate and hypnotic. The most sacred thing you can ever do is to reclaim your desire.